يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the most important qualities in a believer is the quality of ghayrah. Colloquially we say ghayrah, but the more eloquent way of saying it is ghayrah, with a fatha on the ghayn. What is the meaning of the word ghayrah? Unfortunately, in the English language, we don't have a perfect equivalent. There is no concept of ghayrah, there's no word that captures the meaning of this quality. The word ghayrah essentially refers to a quality where you recognize the value and the worth of something. You recognize that something is very sacred and precious. And because of that recognition, you are protective of that thing. In Islam, a believer has to be ghayur. There are things as Muslims that we hold to be sacred, that we value, that have sanctity. And therefore, when you recognize those things that have intrinsic value, that are precious, things that are so beloved to you, that you will do everything in your power to guard them and to protect them. You exercise a sort of vigilant care. You are watchful. You have vigilance over these things that you deem to be sacred and valuable. Usually when the word ghayrah is mentioned, we automatically think about the relationship between a husband and a wife. The word ghayrah is typically used in that context. The ghayrah of a man over his womenfolk. However, before we delve into that area of the discussion, it's important for us to take a step back and understand that ghayrah has a broad meaning in the Islamic tradition. In fact, the narrations of Ahlul Bayt, salawatullahi alayhim ajma'een, the narrations actually describe Allah as having ghayrah. There's a tradition from Imam al-Sadiq where he says, Inna Allah ghayur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ghayur. He has ghayrah. He has this protectiveness over His creation. Yuhibbu kulla ghayur. Allah loves the one who has ghayrah, who has that vigilant care, that quality of protecting that which is dear and sacred. وَمِنْ غَيْرَتِهِ حَرَّمَ الْفَوَاحِشَ ظَاهِرَهَا وَبَاطِنَهَا. And the sign of Allah's ghayrah, a sign of His ghayrah, is that He has made prohibited, He has prohibited all indecencies, whether they are outward, whether they are public or private. Meaning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He prohibits something, It's because of his ghayrah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees insan as precious. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human being. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. That we have honored insan. And Allah recognizes the worth of this being. He recognizes the value of the human being. And hence, Allah protects us by commanding us to stay away from anything that damages us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ghayur. He has this protectiveness, and therefore He doesn't say, just do whatever you want. Engage and partake in whatever you wish. Because of Allah's vigilant care over His creation, He says, avoid this. Do this. Stay away from that. It's not because Allah is trying to limit your freedom. Allah is trying to safeguard your dignity. He's trying to protect your value. Trying to shield you from the things that will cause you harm. Physical harm and spiritual harm. And therefore, we see that ghayrah is such a noble quality that it is one of the qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we come to the human being. Allah is ghayur and He loves the one who has ghayrah. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi says in the famous hadith, he says, إِنَّ الْغَيْرَةَ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ. Ghayrah, this vigilant care, this protectiveness of the things that are sacred and valuable and beloved to you, it's a part of Iman. And therefore, the one who is deficient in ghayrah is deficient in Iman. This is an integral part of faith. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi alayhi, says, Ghayratul mu'min billahi subhanahu. A mu'min has ghayrah in Allah. Meaning a believer has so much respect for Allah. He has so much reverence for Allah, so much love for Allah, that when the laws of Allah are being violated, when the limits of Allah are being transgressed, it bothers the mu'min. It affects him. A person of ghayrah is not going to just be passive and desensitized to the prevalence of haram in society. You might not be able to do anything about it. Sometimes you might not be able to say anything about it. But you should always reject it at the level of the heart. Nahi anil munkar at the level of the heart is wajib aini. If you don't feel anything in your heart when haram is being committed, you're in a very dangerous place. When the laws of Allah are violated, it should bother you. If someone were to disrespect your mother is very beloved to you. If someone were to say something that angers your mother, that insults your mother, you would not allow it. It would be unacceptable to you. Why? Because you respect your mother. Because you honor your mother. Does Allah have less honor in your eyes than your mother? When Allah Azza wa Jal is being disobeyed, it doesn't affect us. We've become completely desensitized. This is a problem. This means that there's a problem with our iman. We shouldn't get to a point where Allah is disobeyed and it's all good. Because we don't want to judge anybody. I'm not saying judge people. But if haram is being committed, you have to speak up. You can say that, I don't want to disrespect anybody, but we have to be observant of the laws of Allah. A mu'min has so much reverence for his Creator that he takes it personally when someone stands against his Lord. This is an important aspect of ghayrah that has become forgotten in today's society. So having ghayrah over your deen, we are very protective of our materialistic possessions, the things that we value. We don't want anyone to desecrate the things that we value. But when Allah's laws are being undermined, we don't say anything. This is number one. Ghayrah in our deen. A believer must have vigilance also when it comes to the Quran. We live in a time where there are many who undermine the Quran, who disrespect the Quran. There are some who burn the Quran. They challenge the Quran. They argue that the Quran is not the word of Allah. The problem is, Muslims today, they don't know how to defend the honor of the Quran in an intellectual way. Someone burns the Quran, and some irrational people in our communities, they start to burn buildings. They start to attack people. If you have ghayrah over the Quran, if the Quran is beloved to you, when the Quran is being attacked, you should equip yourself with the knowledge to defend the Quran. If you know that there are people who want to break into your house, you take the necessary measures to protect your house. You get an alarm system. You make sure that everything is there to protect anyone from entering and desecrating your home. But when the book of Allah is being attacked, why don't we take those measures and learn, understand the Quran, so we can intellectually defend the book of Allah and not just emotionally defend it? Instead of burning houses and cars and engaging in violence, why don't you respond to these arguments with strong counter-arguments so you can bring people to the book of Allah? The believer has to have ghayrah, has to have this vigilance, this protectiveness of the Quran. And the best way to protect the Quran is to have knowledge, to protect the message of the Quran, to respond to the arguments that try to belittle the Quran. We have to be people of knowledge. Today, our young brothers and sisters, they know more about cryptocurrency than they know about the book of Allah. They can list you every cryptocurrency that is out there. But you ask them, what is the 7th surah of the Quran? They don't know. What is the 10th surah of the Quran? They don't know. How do you know the Quran is the word of Allah? How can you prove that this book was revealed by the Lord of the worlds? There's no answer. This means that we don't have a ghayrah over the Quran. People attack and we're defenseless. What would you say about someone who knows that their house is going to be attacked and he just sits there and he waits for the attack to come? You would say he's a coward. He doesn't have this vigilance that is required. A mu'min should equip himself with knowledge. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If everybody could stand up, everybody could stand up. No crawling, no crawling. Stand up, stand up. Everybody stand up like men. Few steps forward. Make space. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ثانية على حب الحسن والحسين. على حب فاطمة الزهراء الثالثة. A believer needs to have ghayrah over his deen in general. Specifically, he needs to have ghayrah over the Quran, the book of Allah, the most sacred thing that you have. And a believer also needs to have ghayrah over Rasulullah and his Ahlul Bayt. You have to have this protectiveness when it comes to the Prophet and his family. And this is what we learn first and foremost from Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi alayhi. When Rasulullah on the night of Hijrah, when he came to Ali ibn Abi Talib and he said, "Oh Ali, Jibreel has commanded me to leave Mecca because Quraysh has plotted to assassinate me, and he has commanded me to ask you to sleep in my bed, in my place." What was Ali's response? Who was Ali most protective of at that moment? Was Ali thinking about the well-being of Ali, or was he thinking about the well-being and the protection of the Prophet? He said to Rasulullah, أَوَتَسْلَمَنَّ بِمَبِيتِي هُنَاكَ يَا نَبِيَ اللَّهِ. Ya Rasulullah, if I sleep in your bed, will you be safe? He doesn't say, well, I'll be okay. What's going to happen to me? Rasulullah says, if you sleep in my bed, I'll be safe. And when the Prophet says to Ali that if you sleep in my bed and you're the one who meets the swords, I will be safe. Ali, what does he say? The narration says he goes down into sujood and he thanks Allah for making him the one who gets the honor of protecting Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this was the first time in the history of Islam where someone did a sajda of shukr. Sajda to shukr was from that day when Ali prostrated to his Lord, thanking him for making him the one who gets to defend Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to have this love, this passion, this vigilant care for the Prophet and his family. We have to have this. And this is what we see in the companions of Imam al-Hussein. Whenever Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam would encourage his companions to just leave, save yourself, they would say to the Imam, Ya ibn Rasulullah, what value does life have after you? When Muslim ibn Awsaja fell on the plains of Karbala, Imam al-Hussein rushed to him. His lifelong friend Habib ibn Madahir al-Asadi, he rushes to him. They reach him. He's still breathing. He's wounded. He's in his last moments. Habib says to his lifelong friend Muslim, "O Muslim, if I knew that I was going to live long after you, I would have asked for your wasiyyah. But I'm going to be joining you soon. But nonetheless, do you have any dying wish, O Muslim?" Muslim ibn Awsajah, mortally wounded, barely can breathe, covered in blood. All he does is he points at Imam al-Hussein and he says, "Usika bihadha al-gharib." The only thing that I want is defend this stranger. Defend this gharib. Today, Ahlul Bayt, they are attacked. Intellectually, ideologically, they are attacked. And some of us, we have no way of defending them. Having a tattoo of Dhul Fiqar is not how you defend Ali ibn Abi Talib. Having a chain of Dhul Fiqar is not how you defend Al Muhammad. To really defend Ahlul Bayt is to be like Hisham ibn al-Hakam, a man of great knowledge, a debater, a theologian of the highest caliber, where when Imam al-Sadiq sees him, he says, "Welcome, O Hisham, the one who defends us with his hands and with his tongue." Too much ignorance out there. We have to learn. We need people of ilm. If you don't want to be a scholar, at least be a seeker of knowledge. The days, the weeks go by, and we don't learn anything. We spend our time on social media scrolling, while the attacks on the family of the Prophet continue and we're nowhere to be found. We have no way of defending them. Number 4, a person has to have ghayr of his deen over the Quran, over the Prophet and his family, and especially a man must have ghayr over his family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Tahrim verse 6, Allah says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nar." O you who believe, protect yourself, protect yourselves and your families from fire. Protect them. If you're a parent, protect your child from what is online. Protect your child from the content on these apps. Protect them from what is on social media. Guide them. Do not just give them a phone or an iPad because you're tired. I know it's not easy, but raising kids is not easy. It requires sacrifice. You're not going to be able to raise people like Habib, Muslim, Zuhair by just doing nothing. By allowing YouTube to raise them. By allowing Instagram to raise them. That's not how it's going to happen. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Addibu awladakum ala thalath." Raise your children, discipline them with 3 things. Make these 3 things an integral part of their tarbiyah, of their upbringing, of their education. أدبوا أولادكم على 3 خصال حب نبيكم. Raise them with the love of their Prophet. But how can you do that if you don't know anything about Rasulullah? How can you teach them to love a stranger? Because to many of us, Rasulullah is a stranger to us. We know his name, we might know a few facts about his life. Rasulullah lived for 63 years. And we just know some snapshots here and there. Teach them to love the Messenger of Allah. Teach them the love of the Ahlul Bayt. Expose them to their teachings. You as a parent live by their teachings. You can't teach them the sabr of Ali if you don't have sabr. You can't tell them to supplicate like Zayn al-Abidin if you never wake up for Fajr. You can't tell them to be brave like Hussein if you're always going along to get along. You have to teach them that love and teach them the recitation of the Quran. Teach them to read. Get them a copy of the Quran. Get them a journal. Let them interact with the Quran. There should be 30 minutes every evening in every household where the entire family reads the Quran together. 30 minutes. Don't tell me you don't have 30 minutes. You have 30 minutes. The question is it a priority? We spend hours on social media. We can't spare 30 minutes. We can't spare 30 minutes for the book that Imam al-Hussein died for. We can't spare 30 minutes for the book that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, he allowed the Khilafah to be taken away just to preserve this book. We can't give it 30 minutes. So having ghayra over our families, being protective of them. And some of us, the only way that we want to protect them is to protect them from poverty in the future. That's why we're on top of them when it comes to their secular education. I don't want them to be financially poor. Look at how much effort you put in to protect them from poverty. Where is this protection when it comes to protecting them from Jahannam? Protecting them from deviating, from committing haram. That's what Allah wants you to protect them from first and foremost. School is important, but your deen is important too. Number 5, and this is especially for the brothers, you have to have ghayra over the women folk of your family. And this is a lost virtue in today's day. Especially if you get married, you should have a vigilant care for your wife. Your wife should be so precious to you, so dear to you, that you will do anything and everything to protect her from physical harm and spiritual harm. Allah says, it's your duty. الرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ. Men are the protectors, the maintainers of women. There's a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ where he says, Rasulullah says, كَانَ أَبِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ غَيُورًا. Rasulullah says, my forefather, Prophet Ibrahim, was a man of great ghayra. And then the Prophet says what? وَأَنَا أَغْيَرُ مِنْ. And I have even more ghayra than Nabi Ibrahim. The Prophet here mentions Ibrahim. The vigilant care that Ibrahim showed his wife. I'll give you an example. It's mentioned in our narrations. When Ibrahim was traveling in the deserts with his wife Sarah, it was a small caravan. His wife was in the carriage, inside of the carriage, and she was veiled. They reached a checkpoint. The man at the checkpoint said to Ibrahim that we need to inspect what you have. He had some gold, some silver, and his wife was inside of the carriage. So he takes everything out, but he keeps his wife inside of the carriage. These are strange men. They want her to unveil. They want her to unveil herself. Ibrahim says, no. They said, what do you mean no? She has to unveil. Checkpoint. He says, no, absolutely not. I will not allow you to look at my wife. My wife does not want to unveil herself. He refused. They said, then we have to take the gold and the silver that you have if you don't allow us. He says, take everything that I have. It's easier for me than to expose my family to you strange men. This is Ibrahim, and look at where we are today. Rasulullah says, I have more ghayrah over my women folk, my family, than even Ibrahim. This is the Prophet. This is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There's a tradition from Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi alayhi. Imam is the Khalifa. He was in Kufa. The Imam, he saw something that was happening in the marketplace, in the aswaq, that bothered Ali ibn Abi Talib. What does he say? He says to the men, he's addressing the men, أَلَا تَسْتَحْيُونَ أَوْ تَغَارُونَ. Don't you men have any shame? Don't you men have any ghayrah? Don't you have any protectiveness over your families? What's the problem? He said, فَإِنَّهُ بَلَغَنِي أن نساءكم يخرجن في الأسواق يزاحمن العلوج. He says, I see that you send your wives to these marketplaces that are very crowded with men. And you send them and they get squeezed and they get brushed upon by men. God forbid, someone puts their hands on them. Ali is saying, what's wrong with you men? Why would you put your women folk in this type of environment where there is a high likelihood that they're going to be harassed? This is the Ali that the Muslim world needs today. If Ali has a problem with this, what do you think Ali would say about what he sees on social media today? I'll leave that for you to reflect. To show you how far we have departed from Islamic values. A person who doesn't have ghayrah, who's indifferent. Someone harasses his wife, touches his wife, looks at his wife. In fact, he encourages it. Ahlul Bayt, Amir al-Mu'mineen used to rebuke men like this. This was unacceptable. There's a hadith where he says, from the Prophet, where he says, إِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ لَيُوجَدُ رِيحُهَا مِن مَسِيرَةِ 500 عَامٍ. The Prophet says, Jannah, the fragrance of Jannah, you can smell it from a journey of 500 years away. If you think of a camel, a horse, riding for 500 years, the scent of Jannah can reach that far. Rasulullah says, لا يجدها عاق ولا ديوث. The one who disrespects, dishonors his parents will not even smell the fragrance of Jannah. And also the emasculated man, the passive, he doesn't think about the protection of his family, nothing. Completely indifferent. The Prophet says this person is a dayuth. We have ahadith after ahadith that condemn this. Now sometimes you might have a spouse that you don't have that control. But at the very least, at the level of the heart, it should bother you. It's one thing if you say that I tried, but they don't listen. If you can't stop fasad, don't clap for it. As a man, if you have ghayrah, every time you like a picture on social media where something is being depicted that goes against the laws of Allah, you're demonstrating that you don't have ghayrah. You're demonstrating that there's a problem with your ghayrah. Because why would you encourage people to go against Allah? Why would you do that? The ahadith of Ahlul Bayt actually mention the things that diminish the ghayra and nan. Diminish it. You look at the narrations, consuming pork eradicates and diminishes the ghayra. Takes away this vigilant care. And subhanAllah, you see in the parts of the world where there's a lot of consumption of pork, no ghayra, zero. Ahlul Bayt, they say the one who consumes alcohol, gradually they lose their ghayra. The one who listens to haram music, it erodes your ghayra. The one who's always mixing with the women, right? He's in the friend zone, right? And he loves to be in the friend zone. He's always there. It's his home. Always mixing and talking. Is she your wife? Is she your sister? Is she your niece? Why are you always there? Why are you always mixing? Ahlul Bayt, they say this type of person, their ghayra is going to diminish. Be careful. It's not a joke. We have to pay attention to these things. These are the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, and I know for many people it's a shock, but we have to feel shocked sometimes. We need a reality check. We need a reality check. The mimbar of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is not just to tell you how wonderful things are and mashallah. No, sometimes we need wake-up calls. During the time of Imam al-Hussein, the entire ummah needed a wake-up call. Because they were completely desensitized by the fasad of Yazid. And that wake-up call had to come in the form of the blood of Hussein. We have to wake up. And ghayra, just to give you an idea of how dangerous the status quo is today, ghayra is actually a part of the fitrah of a man. You don't even need religious training. If a man is left to himself, he should naturally have this protectiveness. And this is why on the day of Ashura, when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, when he was alone, and he was on the plains of Karbala and he was weakened, when he saw the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad approaching the women and the tents, what did he say? وَيْحَكُمْ Ya Shi'at ala Abi Sufyan, O followers of Abu Sufyan, in lam yakun lakum deen, if you don't have religion and you don't have any fear of the final day, فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. Just be Arab, be men. How could you come to a point where you feel so comfortable attacking and harming women? Imam says, what is wrong with you men? There's one more point I want to mention here, and this is a very important issue, and this is when ghayra becomes misplaced. Ghayra is good, but sometimes if it is misplaced, it is condemned. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says, إياك والتغاير في غير موضع الغيرة. Imam says, be careful of misplacing your غيرة. فإن ذلك يدعو الصحيحة منهم إلى السوء. The Imam says, if you misplace your غيرة, you may cause damage to your family. I'll give you an example. Imagine a husband and a wife, they're walking together. And the wife is walking and she's looking forward. And the husband looks at her and says, why are you looking at those men? Who said she's looking at the men? Why are you accusing her of this? Why are you looking at this guy? Why are you looking at that guy? The Quran says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اجْتَنِبُوا كَثِيرًا مِنَ الظَّنِّ إِنَّ بَعْضَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٌ. You have such a negative opinion of your wife that every time you're in public, you assume that she's looking at men. Imam, he says, this is going to damage your relationship. Subconsciously, she is going to start to think that that if you already expect this of me, maybe I'll just do it. It's very dangerous. There are some men who abuse this. In the name of ghira, they trap their wives at home. He doesn't let the wife go see her family. He doesn't let her go to the masjid. All in the name of ghira. Ali ibn Abi Talib says this is not ghira. It has to be balanced. Don't use this beautiful quality as an excuse for your abusive control. This is something that we have to understand. A believer has ghayra. And that ghayra comes from the sense of, I love and I cherish. And I see this as being sacred. And I don't want any harm to come to that which I deem to be precious. On a night like this, we remember the man who was the epitome of ghayra, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. This man was an ocean of ghayra, so vigilant over the women and the children, so much so that no one dared to come near the tents when Abbas was there. On the eve of Ashura, the women and the children, they felt safe on that night. Even though there was an army on the other side of the battlefield, Sayyidah Zainab, Sakina, the women, the children, they all felt safe on this night. Why? Because they have Qamar al-Ashira, the moon of Bani Hashim. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas is among them. There is no need to fear. The protector of the women and the children is among us. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he was patrolling the camp of Imam al-Hussein on the eve of Ashura. Suddenly, he sees a shadow. He says, Man ant? Who is there? He hears a female voice. Ya Abu al-Fadl, ana ukhtuka Zainab. Oh Abbas, it's me, your sister Zainab. Na'am Sayyidati, yes. He tries to come down from his horse. This is Sayyidah Zainab. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas sits on his horse and speaks to Zainab. He wants to come down. She says, no. Stay on your horse. I want you to stay on your horse. It makes me proud when I look at you that my brother is a warrior. She says, Abbas, I want to talk to you for a few minutes. He says, yes. She says, I want to tell you a story. She says, after the martyrdom of our mother Fatima to Zahra, our father Ali grieved very much. A long time passed. He went to his brother Aqil and he said to him, Ya Aqil, if we could turn off the echo, Ya Aqil,